The human soldier's muscled form slammed into the Sheliak princess, knocking her to the ground as energy blasts seared the air above them. In that instant, Raymond Grant became the only being in the crowded conference room who dared to save Princess Tyro's life. Chaos erupted on Nexus 7, the neutral space station hosting the Galactic Diplomatic Summit. Zarkali assassins had infiltrated the proceedings, their target clear, the heir to the Sheliak throne. As delegates from a dozen species scrambled for safety, Grant's training kicked in. He'd been briefed to protect Earth's diplomats, but the sight of the vulnerable princess overrode his orders. Debris rained down as the assassins' weapons tore through the room's architecture. Grant dragged Tyro behind a fallen pillar, shielding her with his body. Sharp fragments sliced his exposed skin, but he remained focused on the mission he'd assigned himself. The princess's violet eyes widened in shock, unused to such physical contact or selfless action from an alien species. Sheliak guards poured into the room, their crystalline armor glinting under the emergency lights. But they hesitated, weapons raised. The delicate balance of interstellar politics stayed their trigger fingers. Harming other species' representatives would spark a diplomatic inferno. Grant's mind raced. The stalemate wouldn't last, and the assassins were closing in. He tapped his comms, barking orders to his human security team. "Charlie team, lay down suppressing fire. Delta, I need a path to docking bay 3. Tugging the princess close, he whispered, "Your Highness, we're getting out of here. Stay low and follow my lead." Without waiting for a response, Grant plunged into a maintenance access panel, pulling Tyro into the station's hidden arteries. The narrow tunnels echoed with distant explosions. Grant's muscled frame filled the cramped space, a stark contrast to Tyro's lithe alien form. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a Zarkali operative, its tentacles writhing in anticipation. Grant didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, using the confined area to his advantage. Human fists connected with gelatinous flesh as he grappled with the assassin. Tyro watched in awe as the soldier's strength and adaptability proved superior in the close-quarters fight. With a final, decisive blow, the Zarkali crumpled. Breathing heavily, Grant ushered the princess onward. They emerged into docking bay 3, where an Earth shuttle waited, engines humming. Grant made a split-second decision that would alter the course of galactic politics. "Get in," he ordered Tyro, ignoring regulations prohibiting aliens aboard human vessels. As the shuttle's hatch sealed behind them, the space station shuddered. Through the view screen, they watched the Sheliak delegation's ship erupt in a ball of plasma. Tyro gasped, realizing she was now cut off from her people, dependent on the very humans who had saved her. Grant's act of bravery had thrust him into the center of an interstellar plot. As the shuttle accelerated away from the disintegrating Nexus 7, he met Tyro's gaze. Human determination clashed with alien gratitude, an unlikely alliance forged in the crucible of violence. Neither could have guessed how their futures and the fate of their species had become irrevocably intertwined. The Earth shuttle streaked through space, its hull still glowing from the heat of atmospheric entry. Inside, Raymond Grant sat rigid in the pilot's seat, his eyes fixed on the approaching planet. Beside him, Princess Tyro's violet gaze darted between the view screen and the human who had saved her life. As they entered New Eden's atmosphere, Grant's comm crackled to life. "Shuttle Delta 7, this is New Eden Control. You are cleared for priority landing at coordinates 378215. Proceed directly to Underground Hangar Bay, Alpha." Grant acknowledged the order and adjusted their trajectory. The shuttle descended through thick cloud cover, revealing a sprawling metropolis nestled between verdant mountains and a shimmering ocean. Tyro pressed closer to the view screen, marveling at the alien landscape. Their craft touched down in a cavernous hangar, carved deep into a mountainside. As the engines powered down, a squad of heavily armed soldiers surrounded the shuttle. The hatch hissed open, and a tall, imposing figure strode forward. "Grant," the man barked, "report!" Grant snapped to attention. "Commander Steele, sir. Mission accomplished. Princess Tyro is secure." Commander Marcus Steele's determined eyes swept over Grant, noting his battered appearance before settling on the Sheliak princess. "Your Highness," he said, inclining his head slightly. "Welcome to New Eden. If you'll both follow me, we have much to discuss." Steele led them through a labyrinth of corridors, each more secure than the last. Tyro struggled to keep pace, her movements hampered by the increased gravity. Grant noticed her discomfort and slowed his stride, earning a grateful look from the princess. They entered a vast chamber humming with activity. Dozens of humans huddled around holographic displays, their faces etched with concern. At the center stood a woman whose very presence commanded attention. "Madam President," Steele announced, "may I present Princess Tyro of the Sheliak Confederation?" President Helena Voss turned, her sharp eyes appraising the alien royal. "Princess," she said, her voice firm but not unkind, "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. I've just declared a state of high alert across all human territories." Tyro straightened, summoning every ounce of her royal training. "President Voss, I am grateful for your people's intervention. However, I must insist on contacting my government immediately." Voss shook her head. "I'm afraid that's impossible at the moment. We have reason to believe our communications may be compromised. Until we can guarantee secure channels, you'll remain under our protection." She turned to Steele. "Commander, assemble a task force to investigate this Zarkali plot and assign Grant as the princess's personal bodyguard." Grant's eyes widened. "Ma'am, with all due respect—" "That wasn't a request, soldier," Voss cut him off. "You've already proven yourself capable. The princess trusts you. That's good enough for me." As the meeting concluded, Grant escorted Tyro to her assigned quarters within the facility. The princess's steps grew increasingly labored, her breathing shallow. "Your Highness," Grant said, concern evident in his voice, "are you all right?" Tyro leaned against the wall, her skin taking on a sickly hue. "Your world," she gasped. "It's so heavy. And the air—" Grant's mind raced. He tapped his comm. "This is Grant. I need an engineering team to the royal quarters immediately. We need to adjust environmental controls for Sheliak physiology." Within hours, a team had modified Tyro's living space, creating a bubble of lower gravity and altered atmospheric composition. As the princess's condition improved, Grant found himself spending more time in her company, answering her questions about human culture and technology. Days passed, and tensions mounted. News of Tyro's presence on New Eden spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The Zarkali Empire vehemently denied involvement in the assassination attempt, instead accusing Earth of kidnapping the Sheliak heir. Battle fleets began to mobilize along contested borders, as other races chose sides. Inside the bunker, Grant and Tyro faced challenges of their own. Cultural misunderstandings led to frequent clashes, with Tyro's royal upbringing often at odds with Grant's pragmatic military mindset. Their uneasy alliance was put to the test when Commander Steele summoned them to the command center. "We've intercepted a transmission," he explained, bringing up a holographic display filled with indecipherable symbols. "It was sent just before the attack on Nexus 7. We believe it holds the key to unraveling this conspiracy, but our best cryptographers are stumped." Grant studied the symbols, his brow furrowed in concentration. Beside him, Tyro's eyes widened in recognition. "That's a variant of an ancient Sheliak script," she exclaimed. "But it's been modified, mixed with— Is that Zarkali numbering?" For hours they worked side by side, Grant's tactical mind complementing Tyro's deep knowledge of galactic politics and languages. Slowly, patterns emerged from the chaos of symbols. "There," Grant said, pointing to a recurring sequence. "That has to be significant." Tyro nodded, her fingers flying over the holographic interface. "You're right. It's a designation, a name. Operation Sundered Sky." Before they could delve deeper into the meaning behind the ominous name, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights bathed the command center in an eerie glow. "Steele!" Voss's voice boomed over the comms. "Report!" The commander's face paled as he studied the incoming data. "Zarkali strike team, Madam President. They've breached our outer defenses. Somehow they slipped past our early warning systems." Grant's blood ran cold. He turned to Tyro, saw the fear in her eyes, and made a decision. "Your Highness," he said, his voice low and urgent, "we need to move. Now." Ignoring the shouts of protest from Steele and the other officers, Grant led Tyro out of the command center. Instead of heading for the designated evacuation routes, he guided her deeper into the facility. "Where are we going?" Tyro asked, struggling to keep up with Grant's rapid pace. "Secret hangar," Grant replied, his eyes scanning each intersection for threats. "Experimental spacecraft. It's our only chance." They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of human soldiers. Grant tensed, ready for a fight, but the squad leader simply nodded and stepped aside. "Go," he said. "We'll hold them off." Grant and Tyro raced through collapsing corridors, the sounds of battle growing ever closer. They reached a massive blast door, its surface unmarked by any identifying features. "It's sealed," Tyro said, despair creeping into her voice. Grant smiled grimly. "Not for long, Your Highness. I believe you have the authority to override this lock." Understanding dawned in Tyro's eyes. She placed her hand on the access panel, speaking rapid-fire Sheliak. The door groaned open, revealing a cavernous space beyond. They sprinted across the hangar floor, Grant's eyes locked on their target, a sleek, predatory craft unlike anything Tyro had ever seen. "The HFY Starcaller," Grant explained as they clambered aboard. "Long-range scout ship, experimental FTL drive." As Grant's fingers danced across the unfamiliar controls, bringing the ship to life, the hangar doors began to close. Tyro leapt to action, her royal override codes once again proving invaluable as she forced the doors to remain open. The Starcaller's engines roared to life, lifting the ship off the hangar floor. Through the view screen, Grant and Tyro watched in horror as Zarkali forces poured into the room, their weapons trained on the escaping vessel. "Hold on!" Grant shouted, ramming the throttle forward. The Starcaller shot out of the hangar like a bullet from a gun, climbing rapidly through New Eden's atmosphere. As they broke free of the planet's gravity well, the full scale of the situation became clear. A massive Zarkali invasion fleet surrounded New Eden, their weapons already pummeling the planet's defenses. Grant's hands flew over the controls, plotting a course into uncharted space. "Your Highness," he said, his voice tight, "I'm about to activate the experimental FTL drive. I have no idea where we'll end up, but it's our only chance." Tyro placed her hand on Grant's shoulder, a gesture of trust that spoke volumes. "Then let's make the jump, Raymond." The stars around them blurred into streaks of light as the Starcaller leapt into the unknown, carrying with it the hopes of two species and the fate of a galaxy in turmoil. The Starcaller burst out of hyperspace, its experimental FTL drive sputtering and sparking. The ship's sudden deceleration threw Grant and Tyro against their restraints. Through the view screen, an unfamiliar binary star system materialized, its twin suns casting an eerie glow on the cockpit. Grant's fingers flew over the controls, running a quick systems check. "FTL drive's fried," he reported, his voice tight. "We've got limited power, and half our systems are offline." Tyro leaned forward, her violet eyes scanning the unfamiliar star chart. "We're far beyond any known territories," she said, a hint of awe in her voice. "Raymond, look, there are multiple planets in this system." Grant nodded, his military training kicking in as he assessed their situation. "First priority is getting our communications back online. We need to warn Earth and your people about the Zarkali threat." As Grant worked on repairing the ship's communication array, Tyro focused her attention on the nearby planets. Her fingers danced across the sensor controls, analyzing atmospheric compositions and surface conditions. "There," she said suddenly, pointing to a blue-green orb on the display. "Third planet from the primary star. Oxygen-rich atmosphere, gravity only slightly higher than Earth standard. It's our best option." Grant glanced up from his work, studying the planet. "Good eye, Your Highness. We'll call it Haven for now. Looks like we don't have much choice but to set down and make repairs." As the Starcaller entered Haven's atmosphere, alarms blared throughout the cockpit. The ship bucked and shuddered, fighting against an unseen force. "What's happening?" Tyro shouted over the din. Grant's hands gripped the controls, his fist clenched with effort. "Some kind of electromagnetic field. It's playing havoc with our systems." The ship plummeted through thick cloud cover, emerald treetops rushing up to meet them. Grant's expert piloting skills were all that stood between them and certain death. With a bone-jarring impact, the Starcaller smashed through the canopy, leaving a trail of broken branches and twisted metal in its wake. When the dust settled, Grant and Tyro found themselves in a small clearing, surrounded by towering alien trees with iridescent leaves. The Starcaller's hull was dented and scorched, its sleek lines marred by the rough landing. Grant unstrapped himself and ran another systems check. His face fell as he read the results. Long-range communications are completely shot. FTL drives beyond repair with what we have on hand. We're stuck here, Your Highness. Tyro nodded, her royal composure slipping for a moment to reveal the fear underneath. Then we must adapt to survive, as our ancestors did when they first ventured into space. As night fell on Haven, Grant set about establishing a secure perimeter around the crash site. He rigged proximity sensors from the ship's remaining functional systems and fashioned makeshift weapons from debris. Tyro, determined to pull her weight, surprised Grant by offering to help. "I may have been raised in a palace," she said with a wry smile, "but Sheliak royalty are taught to be prepared for any eventuality." Together they gathered edible plants that Tyro's analysis deemed safe and set up a small camp near the ship. As they sat by a fire of glowing blue embers, the strange wood of Haven burning with an alien chemistry, Grant found himself studying his companion. "I have to admit, Your Highness, you're not what I expected from a princess," he said. Tyro's gaze met his, a challenge in her eyes. "And what did you expect, Raymond? A helpless damsel in distress?" Before Grant could respond, a high-pitched keening filled the air. From the depths of the forest emerged a swarm of bioluminescent creatures, their bodies pulsing with internal light as they converged on the crashed ship. Grant leapt to his feet, makeshift spear in hand. "Stay behind me," he shouted, positioning himself between Tyro and the approaching swarm. But Tyro was already in motion, her eyes narrowed in concentration as she studied the creatures. "Wait," she called out. "I don't think they're attacking. Look at their movement patterns. They're attracted to the ship's energy emissions." Grant hesitated, then lowered his weapon slightly. "What do you suggest?" "We need to power down all non-essential systems," Tyro explained. "Reduce our energy signature. They should lose interest and disperse." Working quickly, they shut down every system they could spare. As predicted, the swarm's agitation lessened, and within minutes the strange creatures retreated back into the forest. Over the next few days, Grant and Tyro fell into a routine. Mornings were spent repairing what they could of the ship, while afternoons were dedicated to exploring their surroundings and gathering resources. On their 5th day on Haven, they made a startling discovery. Hacking through a particularly dense section of forest, they stumbled upon the crumbling remains of what could only be described as a city. "This is incredible," Tyro breathed, running her hand along a weathered stone column covered in unfamiliar glyphs. An advanced civilization once thrived here. Grant nodded, his tactical mind already assessing the implications. "And they might have left behind something we can use to boost our communications array." As they explored the ruins, they came across a chamber filled with strange crystalline devices. Tyro's eyes lit up with excitement. "These artifacts, the energy readings are off the charts. If we can decipher how they work, we might be able to contact Earth or the Sheliak Empire." Their excitement was short-lived. As they were examining the artifacts, a distant rumble caught Grant's attention. His body tensed, years of military training kicking in. "That's not natural," he said, his voice low. "It's a ship entering the atmosphere." They raced back to their camp, arriving just in time to see a sleek predatory craft descending through the clouds. Its design was unmistakable. "Zarkali," Grant spat, "scout ship by the looks of it." Tyro's face paled. "They must have detected the Starcaller's energy signature when we crashed." Grant was already in motion, grabbing essential supplies and the artifacts they'd discovered. "We need to move now. We can't let them find the ship or any trace of us." As they fled into the alien wilderness, Grant couldn't help but feel a mix of dread and exhilaration. They were stranded on an unknown world, pursued by a merciless enemy, with only each other to rely on. Yet as he glanced at Tyro, seeing the drive in her eyes, he felt a spark of hope. Their journey had only just begun, and the secrets of Haven and the fate of the galactic realm lay waiting to be discovered. Grant and Tyro pushed through the dense foliage, their breaths coming in ragged gasps as they ascended the steep incline. The alien forest of Haven gave way to bare rock as they neared the summit of the plateau. Grant's eyes darted left and right, scanning for any sign of pursuit. "There," Tyro whispered, pointing to a massive structure looming before them. Its angular architecture stood in stark contrast to the organic shapes of the surrounding landscape. As they approached the entrance, Grant's hand instinctively went to his makeshift weapon. "Stay alert," he cautioned. "We don't know what we might find in there." The interior of the structure opened up into a vast chamber that took their breath away. Sleek consoles and unfamiliar devices lined the walls, their surfaces untouched by time. Grant's tactical mind immediately began assessing defensible positions, while Tyro's eyes widened with scientific wonder. "Raymond, look at these symbols," Tyro said, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns etched into the walls. "They match the ones from the Zarkali transmission we intercepted." Grant nodded, his expression grim. "Which means we're definitely in the right place. Let's hope we can find something useful before they catch up to us." As Tyro examined the alien technology, her eyes fixed on a central console dominating the room. "This looks like it could be a communication array," she mused, her hands hovering over the unfamiliar controls. The moment her fingers made contact, the entire chamber hummed to life. Holographic displays flickered into existence around them, bathing the room in an ethereal blue glow. Grant's head snapped toward the entrance, his body tensing. "We've got company," he growled, spotting movement outside. "The Zarkali scouts found us." Tyro's face paled, but she steeled herself. "How long can you hold them off?" Grant was already in motion, dragging fallen debris to create makeshift barricades. "Long enough for you to figure out how to call for help," he replied, dedication etched on his face. As Grant fortified their position, Tyro immersed herself in the alien interface. Her fingers danced across the controls, her mind racing to decipher the complex system before her. The first energy blast from a Zarkali weapon scorched the wall near the entrance. Grant returned fire with his jury-rigged blaster, using the unfamiliar terrain to his advantage. He ducked and weaved between alien structures, drawing the Zarkali fire away from Tyro. The firefight intensified, the air filling with the acrid smell of ozone and burnt stone. Grant's human adaptability proved invaluable as he used the ancient technology around him in ways its creators never intended. He toppled a pillar onto two advancing Zarkali, buying precious seconds. "Any progress?" he called out to Tyro, ejecting a spent power cell from his weapon. Tyro's face was a mask of concentration. "Almost there. This system is incredibly complex, but I think I've found—" Her words cut off as a section of the wall slid away, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, a row of stasis pods stood silent sentinel. All but one were empty, their occupants long gone. In the last pod, a humanoid figure floated in suspension. "Raymond!" Tyro called out. "We're not alone!" As Grant fell back to Tyro's position, the stasis pod began to open with a hiss of escaping gases. The figure inside stirred, her eyes fluttering open for the first time in millennia. The awakening triggered something in the structure's systems. A massive surge of energy pulsed outward, washing over them in a wave of invisible force. Outside, the Zarkali weapons fell silent. Taking advantage of the lull, Grant charged forward, subduing the Zarkali leader with a series of swift, precise strikes. He dragged the alien back into the chamber, securing him with a length of cable. "Who are you?" Tyro asked the newly awakened alien, her voice filled with awe and trepidation. The female alien blinked, her iridescent eyes focusing on Tyro. When she spoke, her voice was melodic, yet filled with the weight of ages. I was a guardian. You may call me Zara." Grant approached, keeping one eye on their Zarkali prisoner. "Zara, we need answers. What is this place? Why are the Zarkali so interested in it?" Zara's gaze swept the chamber, recognition and sadness mingling in her expression. "This is one of the last outposts of my people, the precursors. We built terrible things, weapons capable of unimaginable destruction." The Zarkali commander, regaining consciousness, laughed bitterly. Weapons that will soon be ours. Operation Sundered Sky will... Grant silenced him with a stern look. Start talking, or things get unpleasant. What's Operation Sundered Sky? Under the combined pressure of Grant's interrogation techniques and Tyro's insightful questioning, the Zarkali commander, who identified himself as Vex, revealed the full scope of their plans. The Zarkali had discovered ancient records pointing to a superweapon hidden on Haven, one capable of destabilizing entire star systems. With such a weapon, Vex boasted, the major galactic powers would have no choice but to submit to our rule. Zara confirmed the weapon's existence, her voice heavy with regret. It was built as a last resort against an overwhelming threat, but we chose to hide it away, fearing its destructive potential. Grant's mind raced, piecing together the implications. The artifacts we found in the ruins, they're part of this weapon? Tyro nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. Key components needed to locate and activate it. The gravity of their situation settled over the group. What had begun as a desperate escape had transformed into a mission with galactic implications. Grant turned to Tyro and Zara. We need to warn Earth and the Sheliak Empire. Can we use this communication array to send a message? Tyro nodded, her fingers already flying over the alien controls. I think so, but it might attract attention from others as well. It's a risk we'll have to take, Grant said, his heart made. As Tyro worked to send their coded distress call, Grant began instructing her in basic combat techniques. You're a quick study, Your Highness, he said, impressed by her dedication. Tyro smiled, a mix of exhilaration and fear in her eyes. I suppose I'm full of surprises. Zara observed their interactions with interest, occasionally offering insights into precursor history and technology. Her presence added a new dynamic to the group, her ancient wisdom complementing Grant's tactical experience and Tyro's scientific knowledge. Days passed as they waited for a response to their message. Grant and Tyro grew closer, their shared experiences forging a bond that transcended their different backgrounds. Zara watched their budding relationship with a mixture of curiosity and something akin to wistfulness. Their brief period of relative calm was shattered when the long-range sensors, newly activated by Zara, began to chime. Grant rushed to the console, his face grim as he interpreted the data. Multiple ships entering the system, he reported. Looks like our message stirred up a hornet's nest. Tyro joined him at the viewport, her hand unconsciously seeking his. Together they watched as distant flashes of light heralded the arrival of unknown forces. Grant turned to his companions, his expression resolute. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Zara nodded, her ancient eyes gleaming with renewed purpose. Indeed, the fate of the galactic realm may well rest in our hands. As the first ships began their descent through Haven's atmosphere, Grant, Tyro, and Zara prepared themselves for the challenges ahead. The ancient structure hummed with awakening power, a testament to the precursor legacy they now guarded. Whatever the coming conflict might bring, they stood united, an unlikely trio poised to shape the future of the galaxy. The distant flashes of light in Haven's sky quickly transformed into the imposing silhouettes of descending spacecraft. Grant's muscles tensed as he watched the ships breach the atmosphere, leaving fiery trails in their wake. Suddenly, the ancient structure beneath their feet thrummed with awakening power. A shimmering dome of energy erupted from hidden emitters, enveloping the plateau in a protective barrier. Zara, what's happening? Tyro asked, her eyes wide with wonder. The precursor guardian's iridescent eyes gleamed. The outpost's defense systems have activated. They will buy us time, but we must prepare. Grant nodded, his mind already formulating strategies. Tyro, help Zara access any weapon systems this place might have. I'll fortify our position. As Grant set to work, using fallen debris and ancient technology to create makeshift barricades, the first ship touched down just beyond the energy shield. Its sleek design bore the unmistakable insignia of the Earth Interstellar Defense Force. A group of armed soldiers emerged, led by a man whose very posture exuded authority. He approached the shield, his gaze locked on Grant. Lieutenant Commander Raymond Grant, the man called out, his voice carrying easily across the distance. I'm Commander Marcus Steele, IDF. We tracked the Starcaller's energy signature. What's your situation? Grant straightened, years of military training kicking in as he addressed his superior officer. Commander, we're secure for now, but we've got critical intel. Request permission to lower the shield for you and a small team. Steele nodded, and Grant worked with Zara to create a localized opening. As the commander stepped through, his eyes widened at the sight of Tyro and Zara. Sir, Grant began, this is Princess Tyro of the Sheliak Empire, and Zara, a precursor. We've uncovered a plot that threatens the entire galaxy. Over the next few minutes, Grant and Tyro quickly briefed Steele on the Zarkali's Operation Sundered Sky and the existence of the precursor superweapon. The commander's face grew increasingly grim. This confirms our worst fears, Steele said, running a hand through his close-cropped hair. The Zarkali have launched attacks on both human and Sheliak territories. The galaxy's on the brink of all-out war. Before they could discuss further, another ship appeared on the horizon, its organic curves marking it as Sheliak in origin. As it landed, a familiar figure emerged, Ambassador Lyra, Tyro's trusted advisor. Tyro rushed to greet her, relief evident on her face. Lyra, thank the stars you're safe. The ambassador's expression was a mix of joy and concern. Your Highness, your disappearance has thrown the Empire into chaos. Factions are divided on how to respond to both your apparent kidnapping by humans and the Zarkali aggression. The reunion was cut short by the ominous appearance of a massive Zarkali battlecruiser descending through the clouds. Its weapon systems glowed with awe-inspiring energy, a clear threat to all below. A booming voice echoed across the plateau. This is Admiral Zarkon of the Zarkali Empire. Surrender the precursor weapon, or we will reduce this planet to ash. Grant's mind raced, assessing their options. He turned to Tyro, an unspoken plan passing between them. She nodded, understanding his intent. Commander Steele, Ambassador Lyra, Grant said, his voice firm. We need to form a temporary alliance. It's the only way we stand a chance against the Zarkali. Tyro stepped forward, her regal bearing on full display. As heir to the Sheliak throne, I formally request our peoples stand together in the face of this threat. What followed was a tense series of negotiations, with Grant and Tyro working in tandem to bridge the gap between humans and Sheliak. Grant's tactical insights and Tyro's diplomatic skills proved a formidable combination, slowly but surely bringing the two factions together. As discussions continued, Zara worked feverishly at the ancient consoles. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. I've found something. There's a network of underground tunnels leading to a hangar. Grant's eyebrows shot up. A hangar? What's inside? Zara's fingers danced across the holographic interface. Spacecraft, advanced precursor vessels, unlike anything your civilizations have encountered. This revelation added a new dimension to their strategic options. Grant was about to suggest using the tunnels as an escape route when alarms blared throughout the structure. What's happening? Steele demanded. Zara's face paled. The Zarkali commander, Vex. He's managed to send a transmission to the battlecruiser. On cue, Admiral Zarkon's voice boomed once more. So the weapon does exist. Very well. We'll take it by force. The sky lit up with weapons fire as the Zarkali battlecruiser launched its assault on the energy shield. The protective barrier held, but hairline fractures began to appear in its surface. Grant sprang into action. Commander Steele, Ambassador Lyra, we need to combine our forces. Tyro, coordinate with the Sheliak. Your battle strategies might give us an edge against the Zarkali tech. As Grant organized the joint human-Sheliak defense, Zara worked to activate more of the outpost systems. With a triumphant cry, she triggered a hidden precursor security measure. Waves of energy pulsed outward, causing the first wave of Zarkali ground troops to collapse, their systems overloaded. Taking advantage of this opening, Grant turned to Tyro. We need to lead a strike team through those tunnels. If we can capture Zarkon, we might be able to force a ceasefire. Tyro nodded, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and persistence. I'm with you. They assembled a small team of humans and Sheliak, their former mistrust set aside in the face of a common enemy. As they prepared to enter the tunnels, Zara approached them, holding two sleek, form-fitting suits. Precursor battle armor, she explained. It will enhance your abilities and protect you from harm. Grant and Tyro donned the suits, feeling the advanced technology integrating with their bodies. With a final nod to their allies, they plunged into the tunnels, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in their quest to defend the galaxy. Grant and Tyro raced through the winding tunnels beneath the ancient Precursor outpost, their newly acquired battle armor enhancing their speed and agility. The sleek material pulsed with energy, adapting to their movements and providing an intuitive interface with their surroundings. As they emerged into the hidden hangar, both gasped in awe. Before them stood a vessel unlike anything they had ever seen. Its gleaming hull seemed to ripple and shift, as if alive. Zara's voice crackled through their helmet comms. "The ship is called the Starweaver," she explained. "It's one of our most advanced scout vessels. It should serve you well." Grant approached the ship, his hand hovering over its surface. To his amazement, a hatch materialized and opened at his touch. "Incredible," he breathed. Tyro was already clambering inside, her eyes wide as she took in the ship's interior. The cockpit was a seamless blend of organic curves and pulsing light, with no visible buttons or controls. "How do we fly this thing?" she asked, settling into one of the two pilot seats. Grant joined her, and as soon as he sat down, holographic displays sprang to life around them. The ship's systems connected directly to their neural interfaces, feeding them a stream of information. "I think we just think it," Grant said, marveling at the ease with which he could access the ship's functions. With a mere thought, the Starweaver hummed to life. The hangar doors above them slid open, revealing a star-filled sky. Grant guided the ship upward, marveling at its responsiveness. As they broke through Haven's atmosphere, the vastness of space opened up before them. Grant activated the cloaking device, rendering the Starweaver invisible to both sight and sensors. "Look," Tyro said, pointing to a distant cluster of lights. "The Zarkali fleet." Grant nodded grimly. "Let's see what we're up against." They guided the Starweaver closer, weaving through the maze of Zarkali ships. The advanced sensors of the Precursor vessel provided them with detailed scans of each enemy craft, revealing weak points and tactical information. "There," Grant said, indicating a massive ship at the center of the formation. "That must be the flagship." Tyro studied the scans, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Their defense grid is formidable, but look here and here," she said, highlighting specific points on the holographic display. "If we can take out these nodes, we could cripple their weapons and communications." Grant nodded, impressed by her tactical insight. "Good eye. We'll need to time our attack perfectly to avoid being overwhelmed." As they formulated their plan, a patrol of Zarkali fighters passed dangerously close to their position. Grant held his breath, guiding the Starweaver through a series of precise maneuvers to avoid detection. Tyro gripped her seat, her fingers tightening, as they narrowly avoided colliding with the enemy ships. "That was too close," she whispered once the patrol had passed. Grant agreed, his heart racing. "We won't get many chances at this. Are you ready?" Tyro nodded, her expression set with commitment. She took control of the weapon systems, familiarizing herself with their operation through the neural interface. With practiced coordination, they made their approach. Grant positioned the Starweaver for a perfect attack run, while Tyro targeted the key points they had identified. "Now," Grant called. Tyro unleashed a barrage of energy pulses. The Precursor weapons sliced through the Zarkali shields as if they weren't there, striking their targets with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions blossomed across the flagship's hull as its defense grid faltered. Alarms blared across the enemy fleet as they realized they were under attack. Grant pushed the Starweaver to its limits, weaving through the chaos of suddenly scrambling ships. Tyro continued her assault, methodically disabling engines and weapon systems on ship after ship. For a moment, it seemed as though their plan was working flawlessly. Then a stray shot from a Zarkali cruiser grazed the Starweaver's hull. The cloaking device flickered and failed, leaving them exposed to the entire enemy fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," Tyro shouted, even as Grant was already sending the ship into a wild spiral. The space around them lit up with weapons fire, as every Zarkali ship turned its guns on the Starweaver. Grant's piloting skills were pushed to their absolute limits as he navigated through the storm of energy beams and projectiles. Tyro focused on managing the ship's energy distribution, alternating power between shields and weapons as needed. Despite their efforts, the Starweaver took several direct hits, rocking the small vessel violently. As warning lights flashed across their displays, Grant made a split-second decision. "We're not going to last long like this," he said, his voice tight with concentration. "We need to end this now." He plotted a course directly for the Zarkali flagship's bridge, pushing the Starweaver's engines to their maximum output. Tyro's eyes widened as she realized his plan, but she didn't hesitate. She diverted all available power to the front shields, preparing for impact. The Starweaver smashed through the flagship's weakened hull, bursting into a massive hangar bay in a shower of debris and sparks. The precursor ship skidded to a halt, its once pristine hull now scarred and smoking. Grant and Tyro emerged from the battered vessel, their battle suits activating defensive fields around them. They found themselves facing a horde of stunned Zarkali soldiers, who quickly snapped out of their shock and opened fire. Moving with enhanced speed and agility thanks to their precursor armor, Grant and Tyro fought their way through the hangar. Grant's combat training came to the fore as he engaged the Zarkali in close-quarters combat, his movements a blur of lethal efficiency. Tyro, drawing on her knowledge of Zarkali ship layouts, guided them towards the bridge. "This way!" she called, leading them down a corridor as more enemy soldiers poured in from adjoining sections. They battled their way through the ship, disabling systems and overloading power conduits as they went. The Zarkali, caught off guard by the audacity of their attack, struggled to mount an effective defense against the two intruders, who seemed to know their ship better than they did. Finally, they reached the bridge. The doors slid open to reveal a scene of frantic activity, with Zarkali officers shouting orders and frantically working at their stations. At the center of it all stood a tall, imposing figure, Grand Admiral Zoxkar. "Intruders!" Zoxkar bellowed, drawing a wicked-looking energy weapon. What followed was a fierce firefight, with Grant and Tyro using every scrap of cover available as they slowly fought their way across the bridge. Their precursor weapons and armor gave them a significant advantage, allowing them to weather the storm of Zarkali firepower. In a final desperate lunge, Grant tackled Zoxkar to the ground while Tyro covered him, her precise shots taking out the remaining bridge crew. With a series of well-placed strikes, Grant subdued the Zarkali leader. Panting heavily, Grant hauled Zoxkar to his feet. "It's over," he said firmly. "Order your fleet to stand down." Tyra was already at the communication console, her fingers flying over the alien controls. "I've got ship-wide comms online," she reported. "We can broadcast to the entire fleet." Grant nodded, keeping his weapon trained on Zoxkar. "Do it." As Tyro prepared the transmission, Grant turned to face the captured Zarkali leader. The next few moments would determine the fate of not just this battle, but potentially the entire galaxy. With Zoxkar's defiant glare boring into him, Grant took a deep breath and prepared to address the Zarkali fleet. "Fleet. This is Commander Grant of the United Earth Forces," Grant began, his voice steady despite the tension coursing through him. "Your fleet is outmatched. We have control of your flagship and your admiral. Stand down immediately or face total destruction." There was a moment of tense silence before the communications array lit up with responses from the Zarkali ships. One by one, they signaled their surrender. Tyro let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "It worked," she said, a note of disbelief in her voice. Grant nodded, keeping his weapon trained on Zoxkar. "It's not over yet. We need to get back to Haven." The return journey to Haven was tense, with Grant and Tyro piloting the damaged Starweaver while keeping a close eye on their Zarkali prisoner. As they approached the planet, they were met with a sight that took their breath away. The orbital space around Haven was filled with ships, human, Sheliak, and even a few Zarkali vessels that had surrendered early in the conflict. But instead of engaging in battle, the ships seemed to be working in coordinated patterns, clearing debris and establishing a defensive perimeter. As they entered the atmosphere, Grant and Tyro exchanged a look of amazement. The landscape below was a hive of activity, with humans and Sheliak working side by side to fortify positions and study the ancient precursor structures. They landed near the main research facility, where they were met by a mixed group of human and Sheliak personnel. Commander Steele and Ambassador Lyra stepped forward, their body language noticeably less adversarial than before. "Welcome back," Steele said, his eyes widening at the sight of Zoxcar. "I see your mission was a success." Lyra inclined her head, her crystalline features reflecting the sunlight. "Your actions have brought about an unprecedented opportunity for cooperation between our peoples." Grant and Tyro escorted Zoxcar to a makeshift prison within the precursor structure, where they found Admiral Zarkon and Commander Vex already in custody. The facility hummed with energy as teams of human and Sheliak scientists worked to unravel its secrets. Over the next few days, Grant found himself immersed in a whirlwind of activity. He oversaw the interrogation of the Zarkali leaders, extracting crucial information about their military capabilities and political structures. The intel they gathered painted a picture of a vast empire, ripe with internal conflicts and power struggles. Tyro, meanwhile, put her diplomatic skills to use, mediating discussions between various factions and ensuring that the treatment of the Zarkali prisoners adhered to interstellar laws and ethical standards. Her ability to bridge cultural gaps proved invaluable as tensions occasionally flared between the diverse groups now present on Haven. As news of the Zarkali defeat spread across the galaxy, Haven became a hub of interstellar activity. Ships from dozens of alien races arrived, their representatives eager to stake their claim on the precursor technology. The influx of diverse species created a vibrant, if tense, atmosphere on the once quiet planet. Amidst the chaos, Zara, the awakened precursor, called a meeting with Grant, Tyro, and the other key leaders. In a chamber deep within the ancient structure, she revealed the true nature of the superweapon they had been seeking. "It was never intended as a tool of destruction," Zara explained, her luminescent eyes scanning the assembled group. "The device was designed to neutralize dangerous technology across vast distances, preventing the rise of civilizations built on warfare and oppression." This revelation sent shockwaves through the gathered leaders. The implications for galactic stability were enormous, and debates immediately broke out about how, or if, such a device should be used. As the days passed, Grant and Tyro found themselves thrust into leadership roles. Their unique experiences and the trust they had built with both humans and Sheliak made them ideal candidates to lead a joint task force dedicated to managing the precursor technology and navigating the complex political landscape. Their growing personal relationship did not go unnoticed. Many saw it as a symbol of interspecies cooperation, a living example of what could be achieved when different races work together. However, they also faced scrutiny and opposition from conservative factions on both sides who viewed such a union with suspicion or outright hostility. The fragile peace that had settled over Haven was shattered one morning when alarms blared throughout the precursor structure. Grant and Tyro rushed to the command center to find chaos unfolding on the monitors. A group of heavily armed humans had launched a surprise attack on the main research facility. Leading them was a tall, charismatic man with steely eyes and a face that radiated cold perseverance. "Colonel Darius Kane," Commander Steele spat, his face pale with shock. "He's a human supremacist. I never thought he'd go this far." Grant watched as Kane's forces pushed deeper into the facility, overwhelming the unprepared joint security teams. "We need to stop them before they reach the central chambers," he said, already moving towards the exit. Tyro fell into step beside him, her eyes hard with willpower. "I'll coordinate with our allies, try to cut off their escape routes." As they prepared to face this new threat, Grant and Tyro exchanged a look of understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united in their commitment to the future they had fought so hard to create. Grant and Tyro barely had time to catch their breath after subduing Kane's forces when they found themselves thrust into the heart of a new galactic order. The joint human-Sheliak task force they led became the cornerstone of an interspecies council, formed to manage the newly discovered precursor technology and maintain peace among the diverse alien races now converging on Haven. As the council took shape, Grant and Tyro received their most crucial assignment yet: establishing a network of precursor communication relays across key points in the galaxy. This mission would allow for instant communication between species and lay the groundwork for unprecedented cooperation. Their first destination was Nautilus Prime, a world of vast oceans and bioluminescent depths. As their ship broke through the planet's cloud cover, Grant pressed his face against the viewport, marveling at the endless expanse of blue-green water below. "It's beautiful," he breathed. Tyro nodded, her crystalline features reflecting the shimmering ocean. "And potentially hostile. The cetaceans are known for their isolationist tendencies." They landed on a floating platform that served as a spaceport, the air thick with salt and unfamiliar organic scents. A delegation of cetaceans awaited them, their massive, whale-like bodies suspended in hover tanks filled with water. Grant fumbled with his translator as the lead cetacean, introduced as Elder Zephyr, emitted a series of clicks and whistles. "Welcome, surface dwellers," the translation crackled. "Your presence disturbs our waters." Tyro stepped forward, her voice modulated to carry underwater. "We come seeking cooperation, not disturbance. The relay we wish to establish would connect your world to a galactic community." Elder Zephyr's massive eye regarded them skeptically. "We have no need for your community." Negotiations stretched on for days. Grant found himself spending hours in a specialized underwater suit, exploring the bioluminescent cities of the cetaceans in an effort to understand their culture. The alien environment tested his adaptability, but he was determined to succeed. Tyro's diplomatic skills proved invaluable. She patiently addressed the cetaceans' concerns, emphasizing the benefits of joining the galactic community while respecting their desire for privacy. One evening, as they rested in their quarters on the floating platform, Grant turned to Tyro. "You were amazing today," he said softly. "The way you handled Elder Zephyr's concerns about cultural contamination." Tyro's crystalline form seemed to glow in the dim light. "We make a good team," she replied, her voice warm. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the universe seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Grant leaned in, his heart racing. A sudden alarm blared, shattering the moment. "Urgent message from Haven," announced the ship's AI. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Commander Steele's grim face. "We have a situation," he said without preamble. "Commander Vex has escaped. He's leading a Zarkali splinter group in attacks across the galaxy." Grant's fists clenched. "What's their objective?" "Intelligence suggests they're after a cache of precursor artifacts on Helios," Steele replied. "You need to get there now." As they prepared for emergency departure, Elder Zephyr approached. "We have observed your dedication," the cetacean intoned. "Perhaps there is value in your community. We will consider your proposal." Grant and Tyro exchanged a victorious glance before boarding their ship. As they broke atmosphere, Tyro plotted a course for Helios. "It's a desert world," she explained. "Harsh conditions, minimal population." Their ship dropped out of hyperspace above Helios, revealing a planet of swirling orange and red. As they descended, they were buffeted by fierce winds carrying stinging sand. "Sandstorm," Grant grunted, fighting the controls. "Visibility near zero." They landed at the colony's small spaceport, immediately greeted by the facility's administrator, a weather-beaten woman named Carla. "You're too late," she shouted over the howling wind. "Dr. Voss's team reached the dig site an hour ago. We lost contact shortly after." Grant frowned. "Dr. Voss?" "Ilara Voss," Tyro supplied. "Brilliant xenoarchaeologist, but she's been under investigation for ethical violations." They commandeered a rugged terrain vehicle, racing across the desert landscape. The sandstorm raged around them, reducing visibility to mere meters. Grant's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as he navigated by instruments alone. They crested a dune to find the dig site below them, a flurry of activity barely visible through the swirling sand. Zarkali ships hovered overhead, their energy weapons cutting through the storm. "Vex!" Grant snarled, recognizing the commander's distinctive vessel. They plunged into the chaos. Grant engaged the Zarkali forces, his combat training kicking in as he ducked and weaved through the storm of energy blasts. Tyro coordinated with the local colonists, organizing an evacuation while calling for reinforcements from the council. In the center of the maelstrom stood Dr. Alara Voss, her lab coat whipping in the wind as she worked feverishly at a console attached to a towering precursor artifact. "You don't understand," she screamed as Grant approached. "Humans aren't ready for this power." Before he could reach her, Voss slammed her hand down on the console. The artifact hummed to life, emitting a pulsing blue light that cut through the sandstorm. Almost immediately, the wind began to die down, replaced by a bone-chilling cold. "What have you done?" Tyro demanded, her sensors going haywire. Voss laughed maniacally. "I've activated the planet's true purpose. Helios will be reborn in ice." As if to punctuate her words, snowflakes began to fall, a surreal sight against the desert backdrop. The temperature plummeted, and ice crystals formed on every surface. Grant and Tyro shared a look of tenacity. They had to shut down the artifact before Helios was plunged into an ice age. But with Vex's forces closing in and the rapidly changing climate, they faced their greatest challenge yet. Grant drew his weapon, preparing for the fight of his life. Tyro's crystalline form seemed to harden, ready for whatever came next. Together, they stepped forward to face the onslaught of Zarkali troops, the fate of Helios hanging in the balance. Balance. The sudden shift in temperature sent shockwaves through Grant's body as he charged forward, his breath condensing in front of him. Tyro moved beside him, her crystalline form glistening with a thin layer of frost. "We need to reach that artifact," Grant shouted over the howling wind, gesturing towards the pulsing blue light at the center of the chaos. Tyro nodded, her sensors scanning the rapidly changing environment. "Watch your footing. The sand is freezing into treacherous ice patches." As if to prove her point, a nearby Zarkali soldier slipped on a newly formed sheet of ice, his energy weapon discharging wildly into the air. Grant seized the opportunity, using the distraction to close the distance and disable the alien with a well-placed strike. The battle raged across Helios's cooling surface, with ice formations providing an ever-changing, treacherous terrain. Grant's tactical mind kicked into overdrive as he assessed their surroundings. He spotted a series of unstable ice structures forming nearby. "Tyro, cover me!" he called out, sprinting towards the formations. With practiced precision, he set a series of makeshift traps, using the unstable ice to create choke points and ambush zones for the advancing Zarkali forces. As Grant worked, Tyro's crystalline form seemed to resonate with the planet's changing environment. She tapped into her royal override codes, activating her battlesuit's full capabilities. Her movements became a blur as she engaged multiple Zarkali soldiers simultaneously, her enhanced strength and speed catching them off guard. A series of explosions rocked the sky above them as the Interspecies Council's reinforcements arrived, engaging the Zarkali fleet in orbit. Tyro's eyes flashed as she received incoming transmissions. "Grant, our allies are here. I'm coordinating their descent through the atmosphere," she called out, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Grant nodded, his focus split between the immediate threat and the larger battle unfolding. He watched in awe as Tyro seamlessly integrated Sheliak battle strategies with the diverse tactics of their allies, creating a unified assault that began to push back the Zarkali forces. As they fought their way closer to the activated artifact, a familiar figure stumbled into view. Dr. Alara Voss, her lab coat now crusted with ice, raised her hands in surrender as Grant trained his weapon on her. "Wait," she cried out, her eyes wide with panic. "I can help you. I never meant for this to happen." Grant exchanged a glance with Tyro, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Talk fast, Doctor," he growled. Voss's words tumbled out in a rush. "The artifact, it's more complex than I realized, but I know how to deactivate it. Please let me help you. I'll accept whatever punishment comes after. But right now, we need to stop this before Helios is destroyed." Before Grant could respond, a new threat emerged. Commander Vex, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming in the pulsing light of the artifact, landed between them and their goal. "How noble of you all," Vex sneered, his voice carrying over the wind. "But I'm afraid your little alliance ends here." Grant stepped forward, his muscles tensing for combat. "It's over, Vex. Your forces are outmatched. Stand down." Vex's response was a vicious swing that Grant barely managed to dodge. The two engaged in fierce, hand-to-hand combat, their movements a blur of strikes and counters. Grant's enhanced strength from the precursor battlesuit met its match in Vex's cybernetic augmentations. As they fought, Tyro and Voss raced towards the artifact. The gravity around them began to fluctuate wildly as they approached, making each step a challenge. "We need to disengage the primary power coupling," Voss shouted, her fingers flying over the artifact's control panel. "But the gravitational distortions are interfering with the shutdown sequence." Tyro's mind raced, calculating possibilities. "If we reroute the energy through the secondary systems, we might be able to create a feedback loop that will force a shutdown." They worked frantically, their efforts complicated by the intensifying gravity well. Around them, the very ground began to crack and splinter under the strain. Grant and Vex's battle brought them dangerously close to the artifact. Seeing an opportunity, Vex broke away and lunged for another nearby precursor device. "If I can't have this power, no one will," he roared, activating the second artifact. The combination of active precursor technologies created an immediate and catastrophic reaction. A blinding light erupted between the devices, coalescing into a swirling vortex of energy. The temporary rift in space-time began to pull in everything nearby, from loose equipment to chunks of ice and stone. Grant's eyes widened as he felt the pull of the rift. In a split-second decision, he shoved Tyro away from the vortex, sending her sliding across the icy ground to safety. But the action left him vulnerable, and Vex seized the opportunity to grapple with him. "If I go, you're coming with me, human!" Vex snarled as they both slid towards the rift. Tyro's voice cut through the roar of the vortex. "Grant!" She launched herself towards them, her battlesuit's capabilities pushed to their limits. Her hands stretched out, fingers straining to reach Grant's. Time seemed to slow as Grant felt Tyro's grip close around his wrist. He watched as Vex, unable to maintain his hold, was pulled into the swirling vortex with a final cry of defiance. The strain on Tyro's systems was enormous as she fought against the rift's pull. Warnings flashed across her visual display, indicating imminent failure of multiple subsystems. But her grip on Grant never wavered. "Hold on," she yelled, her voice filled with commitment and something more, an emotion that defied easy categorization. With a final, Herculean effort, Tyro activated her suit's emergency thrusters. The sudden burst of power was enough to pull them both away from the rift's event horizon. They tumbled across the frozen ground, coming to rest in a tangled heap as the vortex behind them pulsed and swirled. "Now, Dr. Voss," Tyro called out. Voss, who had been working feverishly at the artifact's controls, input a final command sequence. The pulsing blue light stuttered and died, and the rift collapsed in on itself with a thunderous implosion. For a moment, all was quiet, save for the sound of harsh breathing and the distant rumble of the continuing battle in orbit. Grant and Tyro remained where they had fallen, neither quite willing to let go of the other. "That," Grant panted, "was too close." Tyro's crystalline features shifted in what Grant had come to recognize as a smile. "Indeed, but we made it." As they helped each other to their feet, they surveyed the changed landscape around them. Where there had once been endless dunes of sand, now vast sheets of ice stretched as far as the eye could see. The battle for Helios was over, but its consequences would be felt for generations to come. In the distance, they could see the Zarkali forces laying down their arms, their will to fight evaporating with the loss of their leader. The combined might of the interspecies coalition had proven too much to overcome. As the adrenaline of battle began to fade, Grant and Tyro found themselves at the center of a gathering crowd. Human colonists, Shellyak warriors, and representatives from a dozen other species all looked to them with a mixture of awe and gratitude. Carla, the weather-beaten administrator they had met upon arrival, approached them. "I don't know how you did it," she said, shaking her head in disbelief, "but you've saved us all, though I'm not sure what we're going to do with a planet of ice." Grant placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure it out together. This is a new beginning for Helios, and for all of us." As the immediate crisis subsided, the full weight of what they had accomplished began to sink in. Grant and Tyro's actions would be remembered as a turning point, not just for Helios, but for interspecies relations across the galaxy. But even as they basked in the glow of victory, both knew that their greatest challenges, and perhaps their greatest adventures, still lay ahead. The galaxy was changing, and they would be at the forefront of that change, facing whatever came next, side by side. As the dust settled on Helios, Grant and Tyro found themselves thrust into a new mission that would test the limits of their partnership and potentially change the course of galactic history. Months after the battle for Helios, their ship cut through the inky blackness of space, approaching a massive object that dwarfed anything they had encountered before. The ship's sensors pinged insistently, struggling to make sense of the readings. "This can't be right," Grant muttered, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Tyro, are you seeing this?" Tyro's crystalline form shifted as she processed the data. "Confirmed. It appears to be a vessel of precursor origin, far larger than any previously documented artifact." As they drew closer, the sheer scale of the object became apparent. It was a colossal ship, easily the size of a small moon, its surface etched with intricate patterns that pulsed with a faint, otherworldly light. "Life signs detected," Tyro announced, her voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Faint, but present. Grant, this could be—" "Survivors," Grant finished, his mind racing with the implications. After all this time, they carefully maneuvered their ship towards a docking port that had revealed itself, guided by an automated system that sprang to life at their approach. As they stepped into the airlock, Grant checked his gear one last time, his hand brushing against the familiar weight of his weapon. "Ready?" he asked, glancing at Tyro. She nodded, her form seeming to solidify with dedication. "Always." The inner door slid open, revealing a vast chamber that stretched beyond the limits of their vision. The air was stale but breathable, carrying the weight of millennia. Their footsteps echoed in the cavernous space as they ventured deeper into the ship. "This technology," Tyro mused, her sensors working overtime to analyze their surroundings. "It's beyond anything in our databases. Even the most advanced Shellyak systems pale in comparison." Grant nodded, his tactical mind already assessing potential threats and escape routes. "Let's hope it's friendly tech." As they explored, they encountered a series of challenges that seemed designed to test intruders, or perhaps to prepare worthy successors. A shimmering energy barrier blocked their path, its pattern shifting constantly. Grant studied it for a moment, then grinned. "It's a logic puzzle. The pattern, it's not random. It's reacting to our presence." Working together, they deciphered the barrier's code, Grant's intuitive problem-solving complementing Tyro's analytical approach. As the barrier dissolved, they shared a look of triumph. Deeper into the ship, they found themselves in a circular room lined with what appeared to be stasis pods. Each pod contained a humanoid figure, their features alien yet oddly familiar. "Precursors," Tyro breathed, her voice filled with awe. "They've been here all this time, waiting." As they approached the central console, the ship suddenly hummed to life around them. Lights flickered on, and a low vibration filled the air. "The revival process has begun," Tyro announced, her hands flying over the alien interface. "But the power surge is destabilizing the ship's systems. We need to contain it before—" A tremor shook the floor, nearly knocking them off their feet. "Before that happens," Grant finished grimly, "what do you need?" For the next few minutes, they worked in perfect synchronization, Grant following Tyro's instructions to reroute power and stabilize critical systems. The ship groaned and shuddered around them, but slowly the tremors subsided. Just as they brought the situation under control, one of the stasis pods hissed open. A tall, slender figure emerged, its skin a pale blue that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. The being's eyes, deep and ancient, focused on Grant and Tyro. When it spoke, its voice reverberated with a power that belied its frail appearance. "I am Arath," it said, each word carefully formed. "You have done well to reach us, but I fear our awakening comes not a moment too soon." Grant stepped forward, his posture respectful but alert. "I'm Grant, and this is Tyro. We're representatives of the Interspecies Council, What do you mean, not a moment too soon? Arath's expression grew grave. We precursors foresaw a threat to all life in this galaxy. We placed ourselves in stasis, waiting for the younger races to evolve, to be ready to stand with us against this danger. Tyro's form shimmered with intensity. The artifacts we've encountered, the superweapon on Haven, they were all part of your plan? Arath nodded. Tools to unite the galaxy, to prepare you all for what is to come. The precursor moved to a nearby console, activating a holographic display that filled the chamber. Behold, the true enemy approaches. The display showed a massive fleet of ships, unlike anything Grant or Tyro had ever seen. They moved with an eerie, synchronized precision that spoke of a hive mind or incredibly advanced AI. An extra-galactic force, Arath explained, that periodically purges advanced civilizations. We precursors fought them to a stalemate, but at great cost. Now they return, and the galaxy must stand united to survive. As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the ship. Tyro's eyes widened as she processed the incoming data. Long-range sensors have detected them. The invasion fleet, they're here. Grant's mind raced, years of tactical training kicking into overdrive. We need to warn the Council, coordinate our defenses. This ship, can it help us fight? Arath nodded solemnly. It carries a weapon capable of disrupting their technology across vast distances. But to use it effectively, we must be at the heart of the battle. Grant turned to Tyro, their eyes meeting in a moment of unspoken understanding. They had come so far together, faced so much. Now they stood at the precipice of the galaxy's greatest challenge. Tyro, can you interface with the ship's communication systems? We need to rally every allied force we can. Tyro nodded, her form already shifting to integrate with the alien technology. On it. I'll coordinate with the Council and transmit tactical data to our fleet. As Tyro worked, Grant turned back to Arath. We'll need a plan, something they won't expect. The precursor's eyes seemed to glow with an inner fire. Together, we may yet surprise them. Come, let us prepare for battle. As Grant followed Arath deeper into the ship, he felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The future of the cosmos hung in the balance, and once again, he and Tyro found themselves at the center of the storm. But as he glanced back at his partner, working tirelessly to unite the galaxy's forces, he felt a surge of confidence. Whatever came next, they would face it together.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.